Hello, in this video, we're in the middle of July. I'm going to take a look at the upcoming Premier League season and give my tentative top 20 of what I think the table will be at the end of the 38 games, end of the season. A couple of notes before I do that. We're basically in the middle of July, towards the end of July. In terms of soccer, footballing news, there's still a lot of time for transfers. So these picks are kind of on hold until we get the full transfer scope. Also, the U19 Euros are going on now, and that doesn't have much impact on the Premier League season because only a few of the guys will probably play, but it's worth noting. And then, of course, the Senior Euros and the Copa America just ended. So there's the issue of those guys getting back and fully fit and integrated into the club team. And then finally, there is the Olympics with both the men and the women's tournament. For purposes of this, the Premier League season and the men's, it won't be too affected by the Olympics, even though it does overlap, because in the men's Olympics it's mostly U23. There's exceptions, but overall, if you look at the squads for the Olympics, there's not going to be that much of an impact in the Premier League. So with that being said, I figured starting at 20 with the 3 relegation teams going to 1 with the champion, I'd just like to quickly give my picks before the season actually kicks off and as the transfers become more set in stone. I will maybe tweak some of these around, but probably stay with them just because I don't want to change them too much. More importantly is I will go through team by team and give a breakdown of each team and strengths, weaknesses, all that. So I'm only going to glance over most of the teams and just kind of say where I have them. And then as the season gets closer, we'll dive into a little more. Okay, so starting it right off at 20. I hate relegating teams. It always makes me sad. But the way it works is you have to pick 3 to be relegated. So it's just how football works. So at 20, I have Hull City, who will be in the Premier League this coming year. I kind of hope I'm wrong. Hull has great fans. They've sort of been in and out of the Premier League. I hope I'm wrong. The reason I have them at 20 is frankly just because they haven't done that much so far, and in terms of transfers and bringing new players in, and not that what they had last year in the championship wasn't good, because it actually was, but I don't think they're going to be able to be consistently out of that relegation zone unless they add, and they still need to add, and they haven't yet. So that's why I have them at 20. And moving up to 19, I have Watford. This one I'm a little nervous on because Watford, for much of last season, they were newly promoted last season. They looked really good, especially the first half of the season or so. They tailed off a little bit. They made a nice run in the FA Cup. And they actually haven't done bad business. They lost their manager, Kiki Sanchez Flores, kind of a mutual parting. He didn't necessarily get sacked. It was somewhat mutual. So that might be a little bit of a concern. But they have held on to Odion Ighalo, who was really good at striker last year. And then they also have held on to Troy Deeney, who's their kind of partners up top. They played a little bit of a 4-4-2 for a good amount of the year. And those were the 2 up top. And they've managed to, at least for now, hold on to both. So that's promising. They have a lot of other pretty good players. But I have them being relegated. Just because I wasn't totally impressed with their form at the end of last season. Add on that they lost their manager. They haven't brought too many new guys in, so they're at 19. 18, I have West Brom. This is one that makes me really nervous. I really don't want to have them being relegated, but again, you have to pick 3 to be relegated, so I have West Bromwich Albion. The reason I do is because I'm still not overwhelmed with their attacking options, and because of that, I think they're going to struggle to, at any point, be consistently in the top half. I think throughout the whole year, they'll be relegation candidates, so I'm just kind of playing the odds here. That I think when you look at the, let's say, 13 to 20 range, I think that there's teams in there that have much better attacking options than West Brom, at least for now. So even though West Brom, they're a very good defensive team, they keep a lot of clean sheets or hold the other team to 1 goal, so they draw a lot. They're in close games, they squeak out a lot of points. So that teams like that usually don't get relegated. But again, you have to pick one, and for now, I'm going to have them in there. Okay, 17, I have Burnley, who will be a newly promoted team this year. I really like Burnley. I like this Burnley side. They haven't done a ton. Are they going to have enough talent in their squad not to be relegated? That's a big question. But I think they will. They have a really good experienced keeper in Tom Heaton, who was a part of the England team this summer as the 3rd goalkeeper because Jack Butland had been hurt. I like Tom Heaton. When I watched Burnley last year play, when I was able to, I just kind of liked how they play. I know that's not the best reason, but so that's why I have them at 17 and not being relegated. Moving up 16, I have Stoke City. Some people might think this is a little too low. I didn't really think so because I'm just still not crazy about this Stoke team. Yes, they have great players. They have 2 guys who were key internationals on their Euro team, and Arnautovic and Shaqiri. They have Jack Butland, who I just mentioned, in goal. They have a U.S. international, Jeff Cameron. They have plenty of experienced players. The Britannia is a really tough stadium to play in. So, I don't have them being relegated. 16, I think, it might be a little too low for them. Why do I have them 16th? Again, Shaqiri and Arnautovic, as good and talented as they are, they both have a tendency to be a little inconsistent or hard to rely on, I should say. When they're good, they're brilliant. I mean, they can be 2 of the best players in the whole Premier League when they're, on their day. But when they're not, that's where I might worry. So that's a deal with Stoke. Hopefully, before I move on, I will say I really want to see Jack Butland back at keeper this year. He was playing super well. He got injured in a England match against Germany. And it was a somewhat serious leg injury, so he's been out for a while. So I'm really looking forward to his return in the Premier League, both from a Premier League perspective, but also from an England international perspective. He's got a shot, if he progresses at the right pace, to potentially one day be the number 1 keeper for England. So I think that's important to keep an eye on as well. Okay, moving up to 15th, I have Middlesbrough. This is another of the 3, I guess the last of the 3 newly promoted that I have in here at 15, the highest. They had a really nice season in the championship. They were looking like at times they looked brilliant last year in the championship, and then they wavered a little bit, but they managed to be promoted. I really like this team. They've made a lot of good moves, which I'll get into probably a little more in the full preview when I do that. But they have done a lot of good moves. What they had was already pretty good. And so I think that, they might be in a little bit of relegation scrap, but I think they'll pull through, and I have them finishing 15th. They'll be a fun team to watch all year, I think. They have good fans, and that I'm excited that they'll be in the Premier League. They'll spice it up a little bit. Moving up to 14th, I have Sunderland. This is a really odd team to pick. I've always kind of rooted for them. They're not my favorite club or anything, but they're a fun team to watch, I think, because a lot of their games are competitive. They're just kind of scrappy, and I just like watching them. One key thing to keep an eye on with them, and real quick, is that they just managed to hold off relegation last year, as they do almost every year, it seems. But the key thing right now to keep an eye on with them is that their manager, Sam Allardyce, is being heavily linked with the England job, the vacant England manager job. So if he takes that, how do they react? Do they replace who they replace him with, etc.? That's something to definitely keep an eye on. But just in terms of players, I like what they have. Jermaine Defoe up top is still good. He hasn't really slowed down too much. And last year, he was one of the keys for them staying up. They have a U.S. international, DeAndre Yedlin, who they still have for now. Mostly at right back. Sometimes he can, for the U.S. national team, sometimes he pushes a little forward. But in the Premier League, so far they've kept him back. So we'll see. I have them at 14. They're going to be one of these sort of shakers where you never kind of know where they are. Are they going to be in another relegation battle the whole year? We'll see. I kind of hope not, actually, to be honest. I kind of hope that they can kind of assert themselves a little bit. And then I would love to see, side note, I would love to see Newcastle back in the Premier League next year, potentially with their manager, Rafa Benitez, who is staying on with them, because that's a great rivalry, and we'll miss it this year. So at 14, I have Sunderland. Moving up 13, I have Swansea. This is another tough one. They held on to their new manager, Guidoline. They were 2 years ago, they had a really good year. Were a really fun team to watch. And then last year, they started off slow. They had to sack their popular manager, Gary Monk. And they slowly started to do a little bit better. They have good players, including Ashley Williams from Wales International. They actually have a couple Wales Internationals, which makes sense. They also have Sigurdsson from the Iceland team, the famous Iceland team from the Euros. So I think that they still have enough to comfortably hold off relegation. So that's why I have them at 13. Jefferson Montero is another one of their good players who played in the Copa America. So I have them at 13. They're a team that I'm going to really try to dig into before the season starts and try to look at what we can expect from them. At 12, I have Crystal Palace, the Eagles. They made that run to the FA Cup final last year. They lost in kind of a really rough game to Man U. Fun game to watch. I still think they've got a lot of good players, and so that's why I have them all the way up at 12, where maybe some people might think they'll be a little lower. They brought in Andrews Townsend. Their manager, Alan Pardew. They have a great fan base, South London. I like their center back pairing. One of their pairings of Scott Dan and Delaney. I think they have a lot of potential attacking options and talented players on their squad that I think that's why I have them up at 12. Moving on, 11th, I have Bournemouth. Yes, maybe a lot of people will think that this is too high for Bournemouth. I like what they've done. They brought in Jordan Ide. I really like their manager. They're an easy team to root for just because of their history and going so long without being in the Premier League. So we'll see. Can they finish 11th? Maybe. I think they will. We'll see how Jordan Ibe does, as I mentioned. They're getting a lot of guys back, actually, who were hurt last year. who had some serious injuries that were key players for them and being promoted from the championship in the Premier League. So we'll see how they get brought back into the squad. And so I don't. Maybe they won't finish 11th or anywhere close, but to a certain extent, I hope they do, and we'll see. So now moving to the top half at 10, I have Southampton. They lost their manager, Ronald Koeman, to Everton. It seems like almost every year there's just a mass exodus from this club, but yet every year they are able to sort of regroup and finish a lot of times in the top half. They just extended Ryan Bertrand, the left back. They had, not just with Koeman, but they have lost some players. But I think that they'll be able to hold on to enough where I don't think they'll be in the relegation zone. I hope not, to be honest. They're another team that's kind of easy to root for. But we'll see. You never know. If at a certain point in the top European leagues, if you just keep losing guys, maybe eventually, that kind of catches up with you. But it hasn't the last couple of years. But they, like I said, they did lose their manager. So is that a little bit of a different dynamic to losing their players? We'll have to find out. 9th, I have Everton. As I just mentioned, they have a new manager in Ronald Koeman. They're really a tough team to figure out. I guess it was 3 years ago now. They looked really good in their first year under Roberto Martinez. And then they took a pretty big step back the following year. And then last year, another step back. Changed managers. I mean, one thing to keep an eye on with them is the transfer situation, because John Stones is probably going to leave, although we've been saying that for about a year now. Romelu Lukaku, is he going to leave? He's a pretty important player, obviously, to them. But even without those two guys, frankly, especially if they bring some others in, they still have a lot. Jagielka, Funes Mori, Ross Barkley, Tom Cleverley, Morales, Aaron Lennon, James McCarthy. A lot of those guys are internationals for some top teams. And last thing I'll mention with them is they do have to figure out their goalkeeper situation, obviously, because Howard left to go into MLS. And so are they going to go with Robles, or are they going to bring in somebody else? We'll have to see. In the 8th, I have West Ham. I wanted to have West Ham higher, to be honest, because I think they've got a really solid team. I just had a hard time of seeing where I could put them higher. There's a bunch of things to note with them. First, they're moving into the new stadium, the Olympic Stadium, which is really exciting. That they're leaving the bowling ground, which is somewhat sad, but it's exciting whenever you move into a new stadium. They have Dimitri Payet, who had some really nice moments in the Euros for France. They have a lot of just solid players. Guys like Mark Noble, Aaron Cresswell, who I really like at left back. And it seems like in terms of finances, they're doing good, at least just from the outside. So maybe they'll bring in some guys. But I think they'll be a team next year that can definitely hang with anyone. I think that they're definitely a team to watch next year, and I have them at 8th. Maybe they're higher, maybe they're lower, but they'll be a team to look out for sure. So moving on to 7th, I have Liverpool. This will be their first full year under Jurgen Klopp. This is another. I kind of wanted to put them higher under Klopp, but I struggled where I was gonna put them higher. The things to note with them: the health of Daniel Sturridge. Is he gonna play the full year? Is he gonna be fit and raring to go and scoring goals? How are some other guys like Divock Origi? How's he gonna fit in? He really came on last year. As you might expect with Liverpool, they do have their fair share of solid players. So I think it'll be exciting to see with a full off season to get some of his own transfers in, how Klopp does. They'll be exciting to watch. Sixth, I have Leicester City. Obviously the champions from last year. As I make this video, they've already lost N'Golo Kante to Chelsea, who was one of their really key players last year, maybe their absolute key player. So that'll be tough. Now there's rumors that they're going to lose Mahrez. They have managed to hold on to Vardy. This was really tough. I had no clue where to put them, just to be totally honest. Like, are they gonna win the league again? Are they gonna finish in the top 4 Champions League position? Was last year? I don't think it was. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but was somehow last year just a total fluke aberration thing? I don't think it was. I think even without Conte and then potentially without Mars, I think largely they'll be okay, because I think, they have Drinkwater, Albrighton, they still have Huth and Morgan at center back. We'll see. Hopefully for them, they can hold on to Schmeichel at goalkeeper. I think, especially with the loss of Conte, what I would really like to see them do is bring in at least one, if not 2 or 3, just solid midfield players. You can do that running that Conte did. Basically go box to box, break up plays, just play in front of the 2 center backs and provide coverage like your average holding midfield player do. They really need, Drinkwater can do that a little bit, but they really need that guy with great mobility. And we'll see. So they're a team, one of these teams where it's really important to see from now until the season starts and the transfer window ends, who they bring in, and also potentially if they lose anyone else. So moving on to 5th, I have Chelsea, who is another team that will be under a new manager, and Antonio Conte, and obviously they brought in N'Golo Kante. Conte, the coach, is coming off the Euros with Italy, where I think most people agree he did a really good job with the Italy squad. They didn't win, or even make the final, but they did. They had a few really nice wins where they looked really impressive, and a lot of that was, I think it's fair to say, based on tactics, which comes from the coach. I am high on Chelsea because I do think last year, I don't know, I think that they were better than that. They are better than that. I think with the new manager, they'll be able to just kind of bring things together. I'm not sure they'll be in title contention, although I wouldn't be shocked if they were. We'll see if they bring anyone else in. Basically with Chelsea, they need their best players to play at their best. Whether it's Hazard, Diego Costa, Willian, Cesc Fabregas, and then they also need their back. We'll call it a back 4, although Conte might play back 3. Whether it's Terry, Kurt Zuma, who's a really good young defender, and then Cahill as well. And then guys like Ivanovic, Azpilicueta, where will they play? So it would not totally shock me if Chelsea is in the title race, but I have them at 5th. So they'll be an interesting team to watch, I think. So moving into the top 4 of the Champions League places, at 4th I have Manchester City under new coach Pep Guardiola. Very talented team. I think everyone would agree with that. They've already brought in Gundogan, and Nolito as well, Spanish international. They still have, Aguero up top. So I think they'll be fine. There's a possibility that they might struggle early on, not just because of the new manager, but because there's a lot of sort of change. Not a lot of these teams go through change year to year, but it seems like they're sort of turning the page from, not fully, but from basically the core that they've had the last 3 or so years to what Guardiola wants to do, let's say, over the next 5 years. So that's why maybe early they'll struggle. But I think overall, I don't think anyone would be shocked if they're a serious title contender, and I have them at fourth in the one of the Champions League places. So moving on to third, I have Arsenal. This is a team with so much talent under Arsene Wenger. Last year they finished second, point ahead of their rivals Tottenham. A part of me honestly wanted to pick them to win the league, but they're just, the last couple of years it just seems like they aren't fully able to get onto that mountaintop and win the league. But I don't think anyone would be shocked if they did. Certainly Ozil, Giroud, on and on, Alexis Sanchez, just a tremendously talented team. So we'll see with them. But I definitely think they'll almost, I would be shocked if they weren't in the top 4 or at least top 5 at the end of the year. So moving on to second, I have Man United under Jose Mourinho. They have all the spending money. They already brought in Zlatan. They had a pretty good core coming back, with Martial and Marcus Rashford. We'll have to see how they do under Mourinho. This is a big question. I'm taking a little bit of risk putting them second, but I think that they have the talent on the team to finish up there. I do. So then moving on, finishing it out, at first I have Tottenham. The reason I have Spurs finishing first is because I think that I trust them the most out of any team. They're not changing managers. They've, from 1 to 11, they have a really good squad, consistent squad. Their manager that they do have is a really good young manager. They have a good mix of young and experienced players. They really don't have a weakness. They will be playing Champions League football, which might be tough just because of the balance of figuring out, fatigue and whatnot. But they do have depth, you have to say. If you look at the makeup of their team, they're not, they don't just have 11 guys. They can go deep. So that's why I have them at 1. Not so much because I think that they have the best 11 on their best day, or on every team's best day, but I trust them the most, and I think that they're the most consistent team. And I would be really, really surprised if they didn't finish in the top 3. And that's why, although it is a slight risk to put them at 1, I don't think it's that big of a risk, because I do think they will be up there somewhere pushing towards the top. So that's it. That's my top 20. I'm sorry if I have your team at a place lower than you think. I'm sure there's teams I have in the top 7 that will be maybe finishing the bottom 5 or be relegated. Doing these are really hard. Again, I hate having to pick 3 teams to relegate, but that's how it goes. Overall, though, I think it'll be a really fun year. I do. I think that with the new managers, with some of the new players coming in that weren't in the Premier League last year, but all 3 of the teams that were promoted are fun to watch and bring in a unique, not only style of play, but their fans and their managers. So yeah, it'll just be a fun year. Thanks for watching this video, and talk to you soon.